What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, over the weekend, there was a certain Reddit post that absolutely exploded online, and it did talk about Nintendo's next generation system, as well as several games that could be going to it, one of which, though, could be on the level of PlayStation 5 visually. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony, as they did raise the price for PlayStation Plus, received a ton of backlash, but now they may have received a response that could actually cancel all of that out. And we'll also be talking about Final Fantasy 16 because it does look like Square Enix has some pretty big plans for this series now going forward. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with Nintendo and their Amiibos, because there has been a rumor that's really started to pick up that Smash Bros. Ultimate could be making a return in the form of a new Fighters Pass, and a lot of times we'll see Amiibo being created around new fighters, and it seems that Nintendo is doing some stuff in the background with Amiibos when it comes to the packaging that could show that they will be supporting the Amiibos into the future with their next system, which probably shouldn't surprise anyone. But we can see this posted up over on Famaboards, where the person going through the different packaging and shipments with Amiibo. On the back, it's very, very simplified now compared to the current one, where you have a Switch, a Wii U, and a 3DS all being displayed on the back. In this case, it's Amiibo. You can use Amiibo with compatible software, and that's kinda it. And in this case, it basically future-proofs the Amiibo packaging without having any one system on there. And again, it's not surprising that Nintendo would continue to sell Amiibos going into their next generation system, especially if they are bringing back Smash Bros. Ultimate, because I still don't know how you top that game. And to be honest, just porting it to the next system, similar to what we saw with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, maybe there's a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Deluxe in the future and a new Fighters Pass. I don't know, we'll see, but we are expecting a direct here in the next couple of weeks, so maybe we'll find out a bit more there. Also, fans of the Spyro the Dragon series, I have some good news for you, as it appears that the Spyro Reignited Trilogy did really well when it comes to sales, even hitting a milestone recently, which we can see this posted up over on PSU, where they say the studio was proud to announce has officially sold through more than 10 million copies globally. Now, I know that the Spyro Reignited Trilogy has gone on sale many, many times, but still, moving 10 million copies for a Spyro collection, a collection of older titles, does at least show that there's still quite a bit of interest in this franchise. And I think at that point you look at it and go, well, let's test the waters with a brand new Spyro game. My only thing right now is Activision obviously is kind of in limbo right now. I mean, they're still working on stuff with the new Call of Duty coming out, but Microsoft seems to be locking down that deal at this time. So we'll see, I guess, what Microsoft wants to greenlight or even continue, because it's very possible that there is a Spyro game in development right now. In fact, with these numbers, I would expect it to be. So we'll see going forward. But yeah, something tells me maybe in the next year or two, we'll start hearing a bit more about what's next for the Spyro franchise. Oh, and one of the biggest criticisms right now around Starfield is that there's a lot of fast traveling, a lot of load screens, and not a lot of space traversal. Well, one person on Twitch decided to test this theory. That's Alana Pierce on Twitch, who spent 7 hours flying to Pluto, and when she got there, she just went through it. So it's basically a JPEG in the sky that you fly towards, and the entire way Bethesda obviously expects you to just fast travel and not spend 7 hours flying through this very large open space that they've made. But yeah, the illusion is certainly in place, and at this point, I think most people have accepted it's not a No Man's Sky style game. It's to Starfield. It's a Bethesda style game. So a lot of fast travel to different planets, and that's a big controversial part of it currently. I've been okay with it so far, but mostly because I'm starting to really get pulled in with different side stories and storylines that are evolving in front of me. But I definitely feel every one of those load screens that you go through to get to them. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this Reddit post that exploded online. Many of you were sending me this, and I get it, because I looked around on places like Twitter and people were posting about it and getting hundreds of thousands of impressions, a ton of responses, retweets, the whole thing, right? So when it starts to spread like that, I understand why people are going to look at it and more or less believe it, but it definitely brought up quite a bit of conversation, I'll say, around maybe some of the development processes even behind some of these games with development kits. But let's take a look here, this over on Reddit, and I also want to point out there's still a lot of uncertainty around this poster's identity and if they really are who they say they are. But nonetheless, this was over on Reddit just a couple of days ago, and it's titled "Clarifying Recent Leaks and Adding New Info Regarding Sega and Square." Yes, it's I'm a Hero 2, and I'm going to stay on Reddit from now on. Now, I'm a Hero 2, I believe, was on Reset Era, and they had posted about things like Persona 3 Reload well in advance of that game coming out, and, well, here we are now looking forward to that game coming out in, 4 or 5 months or something from now. So they were right about that one. And in fact, the studio that they're pulling from, Sega and Atlas, it would at least line up with their previous sources here. So if we look at Sega, they mentioned that another Sonic game is coming next year, which it's a pretty safe bet. However, they do mention Jet Set and Comic Zone, as well as a Guardian Heroes. Okay, that's an interesting. I've never really gotten into Guardian Heroes, but that definitely seems like one out of left field. I feel like we've heard a little bit about rumors around that possibly getting revived. But Jet Set and Comic Zone, Jet Set, I do believe, I think we will see a new Jet Set. I don't know what form it's going to take. Live service, single entry game, maybe with multiplayer. I'm hoping that that's the case and not some weird super game live service thing. Comic Zone could be really interesting depending on the art style and kind of the setup they have for it. So we'll see on that, but I do potentially think that could end up being really, really cool now with people really accepting hard games more and more now than ever with the Souls series. Not to say it would be a Souls game, but Comic Zone back then, and it was really, really difficult, so that'd be interesting to see. Persona 6 is a bit further away than last time I updated. Yeah, I agree, they mentioned it's not making 2024. I don't think Atlas feels that they even need it right now, so they might leave it in development, polish it, etc., so yeah, I think that's, I actually think that's right on. They do also talk about the theme of Persona 6, even saying it's too early to talk about. Another Persona game yet to be revealed. It's a party game. I agree with that too. There's a Switch 2. Okay, Switch 2 dev kits have been here a while. I can verify it is backwards compatible with a few games tested. New cartridge, new camera feature. Interesting with the camera feature. I think Nintendo could do some pretty cool things with where we are for mixed reality or augmented reality currently. It's miles ahead of where they were with something like the 3DS. So yeah, I think that could be a pretty cool twist on the next system, especially if they implement it with some interesting ideas in games. New cartridge makes sense. Probably be compatible with the old Switch cartridge, similar to what we saw with, say, the 3DS and the DS, where it was a different cartridge, but the DS would drop into that same one just the way it was kind of keyed. Backwards compatibility, still interested in that. I'm curious if it's going to fall into a Switch mode to where it plays the games the exact same way, or if we would have some sort of benefits playing on the newer system. Maybe it can upscale or run games at a better or more consistent frame rate. Then they move over to Square. Final Fantasy IX Remake was summer 2024. Yeah, again, I do believe there's a Final Fantasy IX Remake in the works. I don't know if it's kind of going through this situation of it needs more polishing or anything. I believe that it is real. So there you go. Then they get into Final Fantasy VII Remake 2, ends with new protagonist set up for Part 3. Take your guesses what happens. Not touching that one because I apparently spoiled Final Fantasy VII Disc 1 for people from the 90s, so not even gonna take a guess at that one because play Final Fantasy VII Remake, get to the end, and then you'll kind of get an idea. Then we have 10 Remake, 10-3. Okay, it's not making its anniversary again. 10-3. We'll see about that. Square has new PS5 dev kits. Yeah, as they say, it's probably a pro. I agree because I think that PS5 revision is getting revealed potentially, which we'll go over soon, in an event coming up for Sony. And then Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is what got people really, really talking. Looks and runs like a PS5 game on Switch 2 dev kit. Port took no time, I'm told. Could be a launch game. Not sure yet. So with Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch 2 dev kit, yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Square got these development kits and just started tinkering around with them. What's possible with this thing? Could we run Final Fantasy VII Remake on it? Let's try. I mean, many studios have attempted to just put games on the Switch that didn't come to market, and then some they were surprised by, and they went ahead and did it. I remember Activision was one where they put, Crash Bandicoot on there, the trilogy or whatever they did, the Insane Trilogy, and it worked, and they're like, oh, well, let's just put it on the Switch then. So, yeah, the dev kits they're gonna put it through its paces, see what's possible. I'd be very wary about Final Fantasy VII Remake being there at launch. I'd also be very wary about it looking like a PS5 game because, again, there are tricks that they can do with the system to smooth it out, clean it up essentially, and if it's on just a screen, especially if it's supposedly an 8-inch screen, I mean, yeah, you can hide a lot of flaws when it's in handheld mode, so I would expect it there too. Otherwise, though, I'm not really seeing anything here. It's too shocking outside of Final Fantasy VII Remake. These are things that have kind of been kicked around here and there on different forums. I guess the camera with AR, that would be something that I think would surprise people and could potentially be really fun. But sure, if Final Fantasy VII Remake showed up at their big event where they reveal this next system and it's a launch title, that would be pretty impressive. I think people would be excited about it. Even though it's running on the Steam Deck, remember, that would also show that maybe Sony and Square don't have that locked down anymore, and then it could also show up on the Xbox. So a lot of possibilities there even outside of Nintendo. But one thing's for sure, as I mentioned, remember I said this before, you're going to see more and more posts pop up online that continue to get circulated. This one heavily around this next generation Nintendo as we get to the end of this year, and especially when we go into 2024, at that point, I would expect some more, I guess, reliable reports to come out from different websites as many more of these devs continue to talk. Next up, let's talk about Final Fantasy 16 and some downloadable content that's now been announced, as well as a new platform that it's heading to. We can see this post up over on Gamatsu with a nice summary, and this was discussed at PAX West by Naoki Yoshida, who says Square Enix has released a free update for Final Fantasy 16, which adds a weapon skin feature. So basically with your weapon, if you want to use maybe the appearance of a different one while keeping your same attributes, you can do that. So if you like the look of one, but don't like the way it performs, you can mix and match. Onion Sword weapon, new outfits for Clive, Jill, and Torgal, and other characters, as well as announced that both a PC version and 2 paid downloadable contents are currently in development. We're expecting more information to be shared before the end of 2023. And this is really exciting because fans were asking about just more content for this world. And as I played through Final Fantasy 16, I did become more and more interested in Clive and the story that they were telling, and a lot of this just had to do with Clive's kind of life, because as they had mentioned, it's not a spoiler, you go through different portions of Clive's life, basically as he gets older and older, and there are, of course, many characters that he meets and things that he goes through, but I actually think the world itself, especially with the ending and some of the open-endedness to it, is still interesting to go over and consider some of the possibilities. So they could fill in some gaps with downloadable content, maybe even introduce new characters. There's a lot of stuff they could do, and maybe build this thing out into what they wanted Final Fantasy 15 to be, but that just kind of fell apart as they were trying to do downloadable content. To me, this has a lot of potential, especially alongside the PC release, which I'm thinking is going to come out probably at the end of next year. I'm thinking a full year to get this thing over, and when they do, that'll just be another launch for this game to continue, I would say, sales towards that 10 million mark, because it just feels like more and more analysts keep coming out and just have less and less confidence that this game can reach maybe some of the internal targets that Square has set on the higher end when it's all said and done. But if you have good paid downloadable content that people want to check out, and you get it out to more people through, say, PC on Steam, then you at least have a shot at it, because you'll be selling this one for quite a while alongside of that PS5 as well. So interesting stuff here. We'll have to keep an eye out for Square to share more information as we get towards the end of the year. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their price increase for PlayStation Plus, which, again, set off a ton of conversation, discussion, backlash, all this happening online that Wednesday when they made the announcement, alongside of Saints Row being the PlayStation Plus game of the month. But while they did announce a 30 to 35% increase in price that a lot of us assume means they are going to probably lose just the number of subscribers, we kind of theorized that they would end up making money because the people who would stay on would kind of cancel that out and maybe even overtake it. Well, it appears investors believe that to be the case because, well, you can see this over on the, for example, Yahoo Finance, who shared this 5-day chart. You could see after Wednesday when they made the announcement, it jumped heavily, and heavily being about 5% or so, which, I mean, 5% for a company worth billions and billions of dollars, that's a lot of value to gain on the market. And I was just looking through to make sure, because Sony's a big company, other things can happen that could maybe spike the stock price. No, I'm seeing more and more articles coming out from Bloomberg, Financial Times, and others, just kind of conveying to investors, because those are typically the target, obviously, that Sony has made this move to increase subscription revenue, concurrent revenue they can count on. So when you see that, it appears investors flock to it. So what I'm saying is Sony's probably not backtracking on this, because now they're getting the support of the stock market, investors, all these different things. So I'm sure they notice the social media backlash, but to them, I mean, again, it's Jim Ryan. He's a numbers guy. Money talks. I still think the most egregious one has to be PlayStation Plus Essential, coming in at $80 now after the price increase, since online play and cloud saves are locked behind that. But it does appear that Sony is at least moving in the background to prepare an event that, well, they'll show games, and that typically is what you can do to kind of counteract what they've done here with the price increase, with a state of play seemingly coming up before Tokyo Game Show, according to Jeff Grubb. And yeah, it makes sense. You figure they would hold a state of play heading into an event where you will see many Japanese publishers and developers showcasing games that they may have partnered with Sony for. So in that instance, have an event leading into it to either introduce or give updates on these different games. And that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not expecting a ton of first-party stuff, which, yeah, that's tough, because Sony is, it's been kind of a light year for first-party stuff from Sony. At least Spider-Man 2's coming up. But I'm thinking of, like, Stellar Blade, right? That could be shown there, and it's been a little while since we've seen that one. So that's sort of what I'm anticipating here, and I figure this will probably happen in the next 2 weeks, again, leading into Tokyo Game Show. So while we have the price increase, at least it sounds like they're getting ready to have an event to show off some games. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a sale on the Nintendo Switch eShop that is now live, and it is called the Blockbuster sale. It's running until September 10th at midnight, but we can see this over on the Nintendo sales and deals page. They have up to 50% off is what they're saying, but I definitely saw some games on here that are up to like 85% off. However, we can see the LEGO Star Wars Skywalker Saga Deluxe Edition 67% off, Katana Zero 40% off, Castlevania Advanced Collection 40% off. That's pretty easy recommendation there. Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope 50% off. LEGO 2K Drive 33% off. Hey, we just talked about Spyro. There's the Reignited Trilogy 60% off. The BioShock Collection 80% off. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. That one's 60% off. LA Noire at 50% off. It Takes Two 25% off. The Axiom Verge 1 and 2 bundle 50% off. And then Okami HD, I mean, it's on sale all the time. Why not? That one's also 50% off. So there are some pretty high quality games actually here that are discounted quite heavily. So I'd recommend taking a look through there. And of course, leave some recommendations down in the comments for what people should be checking out. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, are you planning on buying Final Fantasy 16 on PC when it releases? Okay, 14% say yes, 28% say no, and then 58% say no, I'm just not interested. All right, so I'm looking at this. I figure some people who have it on PS5 will also buy it on PC again, but there's probably plenty of people who are holding out after. Early on, we saw that it mentioned PC in the trailer, so people figured, all right, I'll wait, especially because the PS5 definitely has its issues with the game when it comes to performance or image quality, whereas on PC, if you have a nice video card, you'll just max the thing out, get 60 frames at a higher resolution anyway. And if Square forgets to put any features in, well, as we're seeing right now with Starfield in real time, modders, they'll take care of that. But for me, I'm really interested in the downloadable content and maybe which way they take it, whether it's adding on to the end of the story or maybe even trying to fill in some of the gaps. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Holdings, who says, I loved Red Faction Guerrilla. Ahead of its time with the building destruction, I also liked the first 3 Saints Row. It was like a breather cheat code compared to GTA. It got weird with the aliens. They should have just stuck with GTA competition. Who said GTA needs to be a monopoly in that game genre? Yeah, I think Saints Row 2 for a lot of people was their favorite one, and that came at a time where they were just making fun of Grand Theft Auto. They look at Grand Theft Auto and say, okay, we can make a whole parody out of that, and they were just kind of having fun with it. The aliens, though, yeah, that definitely kind of got maybe a little too detached from reality. Red Faction is, for me right now, the real thing that's a shame to see kind of get put on the back burner. I mean, who knows if we'll ever see another one at this point? Because you're right, Red Faction Guerrilla, the destruction of that game, it's still good. If you get the remastered it was a terrible name, Remastered Edition. If you pick that up and you just kind of play around with it in the beginning with the mines and stuff, it's a blast. So I completely recommend it, especially since it's mostly on sale a lot of times for like $9. Absolutely worth picking up just to see what was even possible back then on the Xbox 360. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's that Reddit post that seems to point to the Switch 2 development kits having cameras, backwards compatibility, and maybe even Final Fantasy VII Remake at launch? And then also, what about Final Fantasy 16? Seeing downloadable content, what direction would you like to see them take that? And then Sony made the jump for PlayStation Plus pricing, although investors seem to agree with it. What would you like to see from them at the State of Play, maybe to counteract some of that bad news? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.